Huh? What? What do you want? What? No. No. Don't. No, not for that. Don't wake me up for that. Don't ruin my morning. Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome to an all new Talkin Movies. As always, I'm your host, the real Geno Reynolds, and today, if you couldn't tell, I'm really tired, and I got to review Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, and I am forcing myself to do this review. I have held this off. I saw it last Sunday, and I've been holding off reviewing it because honestly, I don't have much to talk about it. I don't think this movie, we'll get into what I felt about the movie here in a bit. What this movie is about, it's about 5 years after the events of the first movie, which, by the way, I was not going to go back and watch again. But I remembered enough. Maleficent, even though she first cursed Aurora and then it was her true love's kiss that awoke Sleeping Beauty, not the prince. She should have been a hero, but she still. Some people forget about these things. The narrator says, and Maleficent's still seen as evil, and the kingdom that she used to rule, they consider them kind of bad. The humans still do. And Maleficent still don't trust any humans at all. But anyway, the prince comes and asks Aurora to marry him, and of course she says yes. And then she goes, Maleficent finds out, and she goes to talk to Maleficent. And of course, Maleficent says, no, 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 you can't do that. And Aurora says, I'm not asking, and they get mad at each other, and this leads to Maleficent in basically being jealous and being overprotective, and throws a few hissy fits about Aurora wanting to marry the prince. And also, Maleficent is invited to the castle of the king and queen, where the queen, who, if you can't see it coming a mile away, is the bad guy. She basically goads Maleficent into freaking out, where the queen takes the shot of trying to assassinate the king, or at least take him out of commission, while Maleficent's freaking out. And of course, this leads to the kingdoms being at odds. But then we also find out that Maleficent isn't the only one of her kind. There's a whole underground place full of whatever her race is. The dark something or other. I can't remember. And honestly, I didn't care. Okay, look, I didn't hate this movie. It's not a terrible movie. I can understand if people got some enjoyment out of it, but man, did I find this movie extremely boring. The story is tired. The story is predictable. The characters, some are morons, like the prince. How the prince did not see any of this coming. He lived with it. I mean, the mom is the queen. The mom is. I mean, if she would have had a mustache, she would have been twirling it. And of course, she has all her secrets, and she wants to start a war, and she wants to destroy the other entire kingdom. And the king wants peace. And of course, that kind of leads to the plot of why the queen feels she has to take him out of his ruling. Yeah, the prince is kind of dumb. Some of the characters, I don't know, the way they react to things in this movie are just, there were some that were whiny. There were some that were just, I don't know. Everything just felt like it had to fall into certain places in this movie. It was very, maybe it was because the whole movie just felt like paint by numbers. There's no real surprises, except one, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Um, it was, I don't know if it was a good surprise, but it was a surprise nevertheless. But everything just felt by the numbers. Even the surprise thing, it was still, I kind of expected this thing to happen, even though the way it happened, it was kind of surprising. Um, but just the characters, even, okay, look, I thought, and I still think that Angelina Jolie, I don't think there's anybody else that could play Maleficent. I think she's perfect for the role. But as much as I mean, I really liked her in the first one. I mean, even though I didn't like the movie, I thought she was good. And I thought Sam Riley's character was somewhat entertaining in the first one. But even neither of them are given anything to really do in this. Maleficent, a lot of, until like, and she bookends the movie. She has some stuff to do at the first of the movie and then at the end of the movie. The middle of the movie, she goes on this like little learning trip and doesn't really do anything for half the movie at least. She stands around listening to Chiwetel Ejiofor, who's one of her, who his character is one of her race. She sits around listening to him talk about peace, and Ed Skrein's character, who again is another one of their race, talk about how he wants to go to war. And, you know, what does Maleficent really want? It's all about character motivation, but she just stands around and just listens to people talk for most of the movie. So, just her character's not given a lot to do. They do have a lot going on around the character of Aurora and Prince Philip, but even that stuff just isn't real exciting. So yeah, there's just not a lot going on in this movie. It's hard to talk about a movie when for a movie that has, again, Angelina Jolie's listening to people talk most of the time, and then we're learning the Queen's secrets, and Aurora trying to figure out what really happened to the king, and I mean, it's just, there's no real surprises, so it was just, I'm just sitting there bored watching this movie when I saw it on Sunday. One thing I have to say is this. How is it possible that the effects in this have not gotten any better since the first movie came out? I mean, how is that even possible? Okay, the original Maleficent came out in 2014. It is now 2019, 5 years. CG has jumped leaps and bounds in 5 years, especially for Disney, right? How does this movie not look any better? Whatever, the fairies, the three little fairy ladies that I can't remember their names or anything. I was never a big Sleeping Beauty fan. But the three little fairy ladies that basically helped raise Aurora, how can their effects not look any better than they did the first time? The mouths even still move weird. They just looked really fake. All the creatures looked fake. The tree creature was kind of cool. And I remember the tree creatures being kind of cool in the first one too. If I'm remembering right. Again, I wasn't going to go back and watch it. But the effects, just nothing looked better. Nothing. It just, I mean, again, Maleficent, like the flame effect and stuff was always cool. So that, I mean, it was cool in the first one. So, but nothing really changed. From what I remember, it just still, everything looked fake. And that was a big problem I had with the first one because it really took me out of it a lot. Now here's the one thing that kind of surprised me a little bit. A lot of people die in this movie. And I was a little surprised that maybe not in the bloody sort of way, but this movie somewhat borrowed a couple times from Game of Thrones. Um, the Red Wedding is one thing they kind of borrowed from. I mean, again, it wasn't like they weren't like, slashing characters' throats and stuff, but they were, it was basically, trap them in a wedding to take them out kind of thing. And then also, even though there wasn't a dragon, the raid on the castle by the race of creatures that Maleficent is, whenever they start raiding the castle, and the queen has discovered this substance that can basically destroy any like mystical creature. It was like she has a scientist put this stuff together like in her basement, and it's this red mist stuff that just basically melts like this race of creatures and turns the creatures that are like from nature, like the tree creatures, it turns them into trees and just regular trees. And we learn that those little fairy girls are, I guess they're flowers, because when one of them sacrifices herself to stop the red wedding from happening, she turns into a flower. And it's weird though that the movie kind of balks on its own rules, because it's supposed to turn them, it's supposed to take away all their life, but later in the movie the flower casts a spell. So I mean, whatever. I mean, it's the very end of the movie. It plays into the whole thing with Sleeping Beauty where they keep changing the color of the dress. And that part was kind of sweet because basically the character that sacrificed herself, which was the blue fairy, she turns the dress blue, and the other two fairies are like, oh, it's perfect, but it's like the flower cast a spell. It was kind of weird. But yeah, so there's a heavy body count. Like I said, you don't see like these characters getting stabbed or anything, but you got all these characters exploding into just mist, and I mean, I guess they're borrowing from Endgame a little bit. But then, a bunch of people die on both sides. Tons and tons of people die on both sides. But then all of a sudden it's like happy, happy, peace time. And the one enemy that probably should have perished doesn't. The Queen. The Queen does not perish. I'm sorry I'm spoiling this movie. I do apologize, but I just want to get this done. The Queen gets turned into a goat. And that's it. And they're like, oh, we could change her back, maybe. So, yeah, look, I'll say this. If you did enjoy the first movie, you might enjoy this one as well. Again, there's people out there saying this like the best movie of the year. No way. But, I mean, can you get enjoyment out of this? Sure. But see, I wasn't impressed with the first one, and I thought this one was... The first one I thought was a little better, especially since I enjoyed Angelina Jolie as Maleficent especially. She was given more to do in the first one. Again, she just stood around a lot in this one. I mean, yeah, at the end she got like, it almost reminded me of, I'm going to go into a little anime here, of Dragon Ball Z where Piccolo absorbs Nail. Apparently her race can like absorb each other's powers, like when one of them dies. So she absorbs Chiwetel Ejiofor's power when he dies, and all of a sudden gets the power of cosplay, and then some more powers as well. She like becomes stronger. Oh, and by the way, big spoiler. She's the Phoenix, by the way. She's Phoenix. They tell her, we think you're the descendant of this bird, and of course she turns into a freaking phoenix. So yeah, there's that. We wanted to see her turn into a dragon in the first movie. She turned her servant into a dragon, and then she turns into a phoenix in this one. So yeah, Maleficent, Mistress of Evil. Of course, happily ever after, Maleficent isn't really the Mistress of Evil. She's just misunderstood. Oh, and by the way, the reason why everyone still thinks she's a villain, because the Queen spreads rumors. She's like, I told people you were bad and they believed me. And that's it. You know, people can't think for themselves in this kingdom, I guess. So yeah, that's Maleficent, Mistress of Evil. If you like the first one, you might like this one. If the first one did nothing for you, this one is not going to help. That's going to be all for this edition of Talkin Movies. If you like what you've heard here, please subscribe to the Real Geno YouTube channel, like this video, and if you have anything to say about Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, please feel free to leave a comment in the section below. Until next time, I am your host, the Real Geno, Geno Reynolds, and well, well.